With the popularity of wrestling, in particular the WWF, coinciding with the release of consoles such as the Sega Mega Drive and the Super Nintendo, fans would have the chance to enter the squared circle and take control of their favourite superstars. Like many of you watching, young Dan the Gaming Man was caught up in it all. Hulkamania was running wild in my house, brother, and for my 7th birthday, I received a copy of Super Wrestlemania on the Sega Mega Drive. So join me as I take a look back at this early 90s game to find out if it's a #1 contender or a jobber stirring up at the lights. Publishers Acclaim Entertainment had their newly founded subsidiary, Flying Edge, work on the development of this game, which was named WWF Super Wrestlemania and was released on the Sega Mega Drive in 1992. There was also a version released for the Super Nintendo, but we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. The game received fairly good reviews at the time of its release, and we maybe need to bear that in mind during this review. The fact is, this is a game from the 16-bit era and is over 30 years old. It shouldn't be compared to WWF No Mercy or SmackDown Here Comes the Pain that were developed from much more powerful hardware. Like most sports entertainment games, especially those from the 90s, there isn't a plot as such, but these games can be judged by their game modes. Super WrestleMania, for the time, had a decent amount of options, 4 in total: single one-on-one matches, tag team, Survivor Series, and a championship mode. One-on-one and tag team is pretty much as you'd expect. The Survivor Series mode was pretty interesting though, as it allowed you to pit 4 wrestlers of your choice against an opposition of 4 other wrestlers. With a total of 8 competitors, I've done the maths for you, which incidentally was the entire roster of the game. That's right, on the Mega Drive you could control Hulk Hogan, Macho Man Randy Savage, the British Bulldog, the Ultimate Warrior, Shawn Michaels, Papa Shango, the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase, and his Money Inc. tag team partner Erwin R. Shyster. This is compared to the Super Nintendo's roster, which you can see boasted a lineup of 10 superstars compared to the Mega Drive's 8, including the legendary Legion of Doom as well as The Undertaker, but lacked the Ultimate Warrior and the British Bulldog, among others. Which roster do you think's better? Comment below. Anyway, during the Survivor Series mode, you could switch between the members of your team by pressing A and start to change who was standing on the apron, waiting for the tag. This would obviously have been a lot more fun if the roster had been twice as large. As it was, with 4 faces and 4 heels included in the game, it was fairly obvious who was going to be in 7-year-old me's team of survivors. The WWF Championship mode could possibly be considered your career mode, which requires you to choose someone to take control of in your quest to win the title, defeating each member of the roster along the way. Where most wrestling games need to be judged is in its gameplay, and again, for a game that was released in 1992, this game is perfectly fine. By today's standards though, it lacks depth, with a moveset that seems extremely limited. Every wrestler seems to share movesets, except for their finisher. By the way, from my research I saw that the Super Nintendo version omitted signature moves, so 1 point to the Mega Drive there. And to be fair, the finisher animations aren't bad at all, though you do need to learn where your superstar needs to be in order to perform it. For example, Randy Savage needs to climb the turnbuckle to perform his diving elbow to a downed opponent. Hulk Hogan needs to be stood near the shoulders of his flawed opposition before he can perform his leg drop. And Ted DiBiase can do the $1 Million Dream when his opponent is running past him. All finishers are done by pressing A and C at the same time. Though please note that Shawn Michaels doesn't do sweet chin music, sadly his finisher is a side suplex. The game's controls are easy to pick up. There's no long-winded combinations to memorise, but the hit detection can take some getting used to. I found myself struggling to attack an opponent that I'd Irish whipped, always attempting a drop kick or a hip toss too early or too late. The game has 3 difficulty modes: easy, medium and hard, which is a nice inclusion, particularly for me who hasn't played this game for such a long time that I imagine that WrestleMania's numbering was still in single digits and probably still had Hogan headlining them. That said, I found the game to be fairly easy to pick up again. Let's face it though, with the Mega Drive's 3-button controller, how hard could they have made it? If we're to compare the visuals to modern games, then yes, this is as disappointing as the Legion of Doom's Attitude Era run. But if we can once again think of how gamers at the time would have seen this, it looks pretty good. The sprites are a decent size on the screen, and I do like seeing the referee moving around the ring, something a lot of 90s wrestling games opted against. The commentary team outside, at the far end of the ring, is a nice touch too. I don't think there's supposed to be anyone. I think the later games on the console had Vince McMahon and Jerry the King Lawler in their place. But my only complaint is that the audience and the commentators are static. It would have been nice to see them shifting around in their seats, or even just the most basic of movements. Going back to the wrestlers, it's fairly easy to recognise who each one is. IRS has his shirt, tie and suspenders. The Ultimate Warrior and Papa Shango have their face paint. The British Bulldog has his Union Jack wrestling tights, so they are all easy to spot. But I think the best of the lot is Hulk Hogan. He's captured brilliantly in his red and yellow attire. I find Shawn Michaels and Macho Man Randy Savage to be fairly generic looking, but they look different enough from everyone else, so you won't find yourself getting confused. The ring itself looks good. It has the company logo in the centre and the red, white and blue ropes. It's very reminiscent of the Hasbro wrestling rings that were available to buy at the time. I myself had one that came with an add-on that made sounds of the bell, among other things. Also, it's nice to see Howard Finkel announcing the competitors before each bout, and a screen that has him announcing winners at the end too. Like any 16-bit game, the sound is limited, but they did a fairly good job with the entrance themes. Well, some were better than others. The track that appears on the menus is very of its time, but as I always seem to say in these videos, if you played this game back at the time, and you revisit it now, you'll surely get a hit of nostalgia when you hear it. The sound effects in the match are fine. You'll hear every punch, every tag, every slam, to the background noise of a crowd that never really shows any emotion, well, except for a quick cheer at the sound of the bell when the match ends. It was nice to revisit this one. It was my first experience of playing a wrestling game as a kid. I continued to play every WWF and WWE game that I could get my hands on from the mid-90s up until about 10 years ago. Never showed much interest in the post-Attitude product. I just enjoyed playing as the legends, and the 8 superstars included here are all legends, which makes this one somewhat appealing to me even today. That said, my rating for Super Wrestlemania on the Sega Mega Drive is 5.5 out of 10. I managed to get hours upon hours of fun out of this as a 7-8 year old, but today in my late 30s I found myself getting bored fairly quickly. The gameplay is quite repetitive, and the small pool of superstars that you have to choose from, although they're all legends, makes this game get old quick. I'm glad I'll always have my memories of this one, but a bit like how I felt when I revisited Grand Theft Auto, card in the top corner, this game isn't as fun now as it was for me back then. Flying Edge and Acclaim would go on to make WWF Royal Rumble in '93 and WWF Raw in '94 using this same game engine. I haven't played either of them, but if you'd like me to do a comparison of all three, then let me know in the comments. Otherwise, I think I'll probably just leave this one to be counted out. And that's it. If you made it this far into the video, then thank you very much. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and check the video description for links to my social media accounts. Until next time, stay safe and keep gaming.